Alright, so there's a little bit of a demo on how to do kind of maybe a pack with some wrinkles and some stitches and stuff like that, just really quickly. So there's a cylinder here. I'm going to make it a polymesh 3D, and I'm going to go and turn off project, turn off blur, dynamesh this cylinder here, make it a matte cap gray, hit X to go across X symmetry, W, and I'm going to shrink this down. I'm going to hold down Control, I'm going to hold down Shift and change this to Smooth Stronger. And now I can go ahead and smooth this out. Preferences, edit, turn off align curve surface. So we have a little pack here. So if I want to make some adjustments or put some pouches on here or something like that, there's a couple different ways I can do that. I can go into mask mode, I can do mask lasso, and then with this little piece here I can hit Control W, which will make a polygroup here. I can isolate this polygroup here, and then I can go into masking. I can mask border, and then I can control click to invert that mask. I can go in here to my polish by features open circle and just smooth out that edge there, as well as I can go in here and simply do a slice curve. And then I'll go ahead and Control Shift slice curve, there we go. And that'll actually cut the geometry in there and give me a nice clean curve. So now that I have that, an easy way to get good geometry, let's go to Geometry, Z-Remesher, do Keep Groups, and I can do a target polygon count of 5, which is fine. I'm just going to lower it anyways. So once that's done running, if that's low enough, you're good to go. If you want to, you can go half and just do it again, half, do it again. It's like, okay, that's the resolution that I want. So now that I have these objects, I can isolate them, and I can do extraction with thickness, I can do Q mesh, I can split this off into its own polygroup, I can do an auto groups. Another thing I can do is go to edge loop, panel loop. So I'm going to drop this down to like say 2 loops here, give it some thickness, turn the polish down, and just hit panel loops. So now I've got panel loops separating these pieces out. And at this point I can go into subtool, split. You don't want to do group split because these have polygroups in here, so if I hit isolate this one, do Control Shift A, there's the whole entire object in here. So in this case you would do split the parts, and that'll split them all into parts, or you can simply go in here, do Control Shift A, and then I can do a split hidden, and then I can grab this one, do the same thing. And now I've got 3 separate parts in here. And if you want to at first, you can go ahead and increase your polygroups and then Control D to subdivide. And then we'll go ahead and turn off X symmetry here. And then we'll go into uncrease all and then Control D. And now this is a nice subdivided mesh. And for my lazy radius here on my standard brush, I'm going to go ahead and bump that up. And then you can go to this one, do the same thing. We can increase polygroup, subdivide, uncrease all, subdivide again, and then we can turn off X symmetry and just carry this across. Same thing down here. Now this one I'm just going to go ahead and just subdivide, whatever. And we'll turn off X symmetry. And we'll tap this one. So now I've got separate objects that I can sculpt individually. So if they are separate materials, I can quickly give them material ID fill. If they're separate types of object, that means I can go in here and I can make this wrinkle, make this a different type of material, wrinkles or something. I can make this one more thick and burlappy, and this one more silky and a lot more wrinkly, maybe, whatever you want to do. So anyway, we got these separate objects here, and we can sculpt them individually. Now if you want to, you can do a couple different things as well. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one off, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to drop the subdivision down. I just basically want to steal some of this geometry, so I'm going to delete higher. I'm going to hold down Control Shift and go into select lasso, and I'm going to grab these 2 edge rings here, and I'm going to delete hidden. And now I'm going to go into my Z modeler, and I'm going to do Q mesh polygroup all, and I'm going to pull this out, and now I've got like some trim here, so I'm going to do a quick crease polygroup, and then I'm going to Control D to subdivide that a couple times, do an uncrease all, Control D, and now I have kind of like a trim mesh here. Cool. So I can go ahead and just modify this trim, and if I wanted to, I can go ahead and drop stitching in here along a curve, or I can make a curve brush with stitches. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. I guess I can start with a ring, and then we'll just go into the initialized state, and we'll drop our S divides way down and our L divides down quite a bit. And if we like what that has, we'll do make polymesh 3D. And I'll really quickly, actually, was there a coverage on there? Coverage, yes. Shoot, perfect. So we'll do a coverage of 180. That'll work, and then we can do actually less divides here. I'm just trying to make this as simple as possible, and that'll work fine. And now what I want to do is actually I'm going to mask pen here. I'm going to mask this bottom part out, go into transpose, control shift, drag out a little bit of give so I can actually kind of bury this within the mesh when I'm done. And I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. So there we go. That'll be my stitch insert brush. So I'm going to go to brush, create insert mesh new. We'll select this one, go into move mode, hold down control shift, and just drag a duplicate over. And then we'll go to brush, select that last insert mesh we created, go back into brush, create insert mesh, append, and now we have a single version and a double version. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and go to stroke, and we'll do curve mode for these brushes. And now I can have a curve brush here that we can update. Oops, we got to select it here. There we go. Select the insert mesh brush and then turn on curve mode for that. Actually turn on curve mode for my standard brush, which I don't want. There we go. So now there's my dual stitches here, and if I want to stretch those or put some more spacing in between those, I can go to stroke, curve step 1.25, and then touch that, and that'll update so it kind of spaces them out a little bit. And you got to make sure if you go M and you select the single, make sure that it inherits all those properties. So I don't think it kept this curve step, so we'll punch in 1.25 for that one. Let's punch in a little bit more. Let's do 1.5. And let's drag that out again. If I make my brush size bigger, there we go. That's fine. So that looks like that'll work. So I like this brush. I'm going to go to brush, and that icon's fine. So I'll go to brush, save as, and I'll save this in my ZBrush 4R7, ZBrushes. There we go. And we'll call this temp stitch. And now we can go back to our bag here. And there's a couple different things we could do. So if we have an object like this, let's say, the one thing stitches aren't going to like is if an object has subdivision history. So just a really quick fix for that is I can go like insert a sphere that doesn't have any subdivision history, and then I can go down here to deformation and size and just shrink that down and just stick it somewhere in the middle of the object here. And this is like a null object with no subdivision history, so I can just use this for doing my stitches. So now that I have this selected, I can go into my brush here and I can do temp stitch, and I can select my single stitch, and I can go through here and I can basically just go along my object and drop some stitches in there, and then I can look at it and go, is that big enough? Is that small enough? I can make my brush size smaller, make my brush size bigger, and kind of fine tune that. And if I like that, I can tap off on my object. Cool, I got stitches, and I can quickly go in here and just kind of move these around a little bit. And another thing I forgot to mention is when I made that brush, you would want to go in and set your depth on the stitch brush. So let's do that again. Let's do brush, grab this one, grab the single, and we'll make that depth. Let's do the embed at like 0. There we go. So let's drag that on here. Cool, that embedded it. Alright. So then, I did a really bad job drawing that out, but I can go and fix that really quickly. And if I like that, I can tap that object. I can grab the Damien standard brush with a lazy radius, and I can go and I can kind of make it look like it was embedded in here. And then I go in here with my standard brush, and I can kind of pull this out on the side if I want to. And that's one way to do stitches. Another thing I can do is I can duplicate this one off. I'm going to grab this outside loop here, and I'm going to do a quick delete hidden. Oops, let's get rid of our subdivision levels here. Geometry, delete lower, delete hidden, and then I can go into my stroke menu here, and we're going to frame border. And then I'm going to grab my stitches brush. Actually, before I frame border, I'm going to embed these stitches a little bit. So I'm going to do Control Shift S. Where is it? Actually, let's undo that. So we have a whole object here. I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to do Control Shift S once, twice, and now I'm going to delete lower, and now I'm going to delete hidden, and now I'm going to grab my brush with my stitches, and we'll do a single stitch, and then I'll go in here to stroke, frame mesh, tap that stroke, and then there's my stitches. I can make my stitches smaller, make them bigger, change the curve step value if I want to, and if I like that I can go ahead and tap off of that, and then I'll do a quick hide point split hidden, and then we'll go ahead and delete this mesh because we don't need it anymore. And now that stitching is going all the way around that mesh. Then I can grab this mesh here and go in here with my Damien standard brush and, you know, embed these stitches a little bit, build this up. And another thing you can do, if you don't want to borrow geometry from a trim, you can go in here and let's go grab our sphere. So we've got our sphere with some stitches in it. I'm just going to split this off, and now it's just a sphere with no stitches. With the sphere selected, I'm going to go in here with my BT Opology brush, and let's go ahead and make like a Velcro patch. So we'll go like here, here, Velcro patch, and we'll give it some thickness here. That's good enough. It's a little bit thick. Let's drop that draw size down and tap. There we go, that's better. Hide point split hidden. Now this is its own subtool. I can go ahead and clean this up a little bit. If I want it to be equal on both sides, I can do a quick mirror and weld. Actually, let's do a mirror and weld. Nope. I want to make sure that is over the midline here. There we go. A little bit cleaner. And then I can go into X mode and make this all nice and symmetrical. And if I want to, I can go ahead and grab these edges. I'll do a quick crease on those edges. So when I subdivide a couple times, it'll keep it nice and creased. And then I can do an uncrease all, and then subdivide that a couple times. Now I've got like a little Velcro patch or a little Jansport little name tag thing. And on this one, what I can do is I can duplicate this off, and I can steal this, do a Control-Shift-S, bring this in a couple times, do a delete lower, delete hidden, and let's see if I can reconstruct. Yeah, so I can actually reconstruct subdivision history one time off of that to kind of get a little bit simpler geometry. We'll do a delete higher, and now what I can do is go into my Q modeler brush, and we'll do a Q mesh polygroup all. We'll pull this out. So now we've got Velcro with a little border around it, and this one I can do a crease polygroup. But if I Control D, it's going to kind of melt those edges a little bit, which might be okay. If I didn't want that, I could just crease these sides in there. We'll hit Control D a couple times, and now we have two separate objects. So on this one I can go through and just kind of chew up these edges a little bit here, whatever. And then on this one I can go through here and we'll do an uncrease all, Control D to subdivide, and we'll smooth this out a little bit. And in fact, let's go in here. I'm going to select this back part, mask, bring everything back, invert that mask, move, pull this back. There we go. And now I can smooth this out a bit. And then if I want to do let's say a standard brush spray with that alpha, we can go in here and hey, Velcro. So now we've got trim and stitches, and if you want to drop some stitches along here you can, and then again you can use like the Damien standard or your own special brush. Make sure the lazy mouse is on. Go through here and just kind of embed those a little bit. Another thing you're going to want to do is grab those stitches here and give them, and now you can go ahead and fill those with the material ID. Hit Control D to subdivide, and then go in here and inflate them up a little bit. Let's try one. There we go. Nice big fat stitches. Perfect. So really quick and easy. Bag, separate out your objects, drop some trim on there, panel loops, sculpt some wrinkles, all that good stuff.